World. Disharmony. Harmony.
In human life, the developmental mechanism appearing as conscience is not particular only to this stage. It is a preliminary developmental and evolutionary mechanism which all beings in the world are subject to. Therefore, it is necessary to define and understand conscience with this general value. Conscience is a preparatory mechanism orientated to the realization of duty, which is the purpose of all acts and actions for beings. Since the purpose of all beings is evolution, and the meaning of evolution at the stage of humanity is preparation for the superworld plan of duty, the conscience mechanism, of which the definition is based on the concept of preparation for duty, must be all-inclusive for all beings in the world. On the other hand, there is a unity between the development of comprehension and conscience. However, the comprehension of beings varies greatly according to their levels of development. So, among beings with varying comprehensions, their understanding of conscience and conscience applications will accordingly be different. So far, only the state of conscience at the stage of human has been studied, and its states and situations corresponding to its other stages have been left out of the account. This situation has not allowed mankind to study the consecutive flow of conscience in stages starting from initial plant life to human life. However, studying conscience within the whole of world life is necessary for understanding the knowledge of evolution better. Conscience, with its general and comprehensive implications, should be studied under the light of the duality principle and value differentiation. We have previously explained in detail that everything happens in our whole cosmos through the duality principle and value differentiation mechanism, and no particle, no event or concept can be excluded from this principle. And conscience, a powerful mechanism for evolutionary preparation in the world, also obeys this principle. Therefore, conscience is a duality unit. We have mentioned that the duality unit comprises two opposing components. We will explain these opposite components of the conscience duality. The existence of opposites in any duality unit is necessary for its function. When there are no opposites, the purpose of existence of that unit cannot be realized. Therefore, one of the opposite components of the conscience which is aimed at ensuring development, the higher one, is directed towards a sense of duty. On the other hand, its opposite, that is, lower component, is the earthly cravings, hindering the former's advance along the path of acquiring a sense of duty. Consequently, we will call the former the duty preparation component and the latter the earthly craving component. So, the conscience mechanism, which works for the preparation of beings in the world to the plan of duty, has two opposite components. One is directed towards duty and the other is directed towards the earthly cravings, and the conscience mechanism works through conflicts, struggles and states of equilibrium which occur as the result of these two components' continuous value differentiation, that is, as one or other opposite receives superior values and influences. And the being's advancement takes on various forms in accordance with these states of equilibrium. These conflicts and states of equilibrium exist in all stages of all beings in the world, according to their powers of instinct, intuition, and comprehension. Mankind cannot comprehend the presence of this duality in plants, animals, and even some human beings. Because the form of this mechanism, understood by mankind, appears only in mankind. For conscience to take this form, comprehension must reach the level that is seen in mankind. Because of this, the duality of development that is seen in levels below human will of course not be similar to the form of conscience in mankind. Nevertheless, this duality of development exists in all beings in the world, starting from the most primitive ones which have entered in a more or less independent and free state. and their development, albeit very slowly, depends on the workings of this mechanism. Because the fragments of some breakthroughs of life in the very primitive state are seen in beings using plant bodies, it is possible for mankind to expand the scope of the duality principle of his comprehension as far as to them. However, because the form of this mechanism seen in mankind as conscience has been perfected and taken to its fullest form, for not confusing the minds by extending this term to the beings below human, it is suitable to generalize the term as the developmental or evolutionary mechanism when we talk about all beings, and not name it as conscience, as it is in mankind. Now, let us state the equivalence of concepts entailed by developmental mechanism, such as comprehension and freedom in the simple beings in the world, such as plants and animals. In every embodied being there is the simplest and most primitive state of comprehension and freedom, particular to it. We have explained this above. However, comprehensions and wills at primitive levels carry completely different meanings than those accepted by mankind. Especially in plants, these are too simple and primitive to be sensed, almost in states of instinctual leaps, which is abundantly sufficient for the life needs of the beings in that stage. So, in plants and animals, even if not in the form of conscience known by mankind, there is an equivalent developmental duality. Nevertheless, we repeat that it should not be considered in the form of duty-earthly cravings duality in the human realm. This duality, which we accept as only a simple developmental mechanism in primitive beings, is naturally attuned to most primitive instincts. For example, let us take plants. Comprehension and freedom of will in plants is so primitive and simple in comparison with mankind that it has no objective, but rather a subjective character, and it is almost impossible for human comprehension to grasp it. Because of this, development in them appears to mankind to be mechanical, but this is an illusion. For, beings in this stage, unlike the ones in crude matter, are not subject only to the influences coming from the unitary and are obliged to adapt the motions they bring out in matter. In these beings, the needs of instinctual leaps have emerged and simple applications of these have started. Actually, as it takes its food from the soil through its roots and spreads it throughout its body, it's utilizing and spending these in its body. By obeying the capillarity feature in physics indicates that its instinctual leaps are primitive, almost to a degree that it is obscure to mankind. This state expresses the simplest form of that plant's intervention in crude matter for survival. It is also valid for other survival functions of the plant. So, only with the condition of preserving this meaning, we say that development in plants is automatic. Because of this, they each have as well, although very simple, a developmental mechanism consisting of automatic and simple interventions, which are sufficient in this primitive state of animation, and this, as well, is realized in a duality unit whose name, in the life of mankind, is conscience. After all, if we do not accept this view, we cannot explain the advancement of plants and animals in accordance with the developmental mechanism particular to embodied beings in the world. This situation is a little bit clearer in animals. For, their comprehension and freedom of will are a little bit more developed, that is, up to a degree which can strike the eye of mankind. Because of this, it is possible for many to observe this duality unit mechanism in animals with some small effort. When a dog is set free between a piece of bone and a stick, which it was beaten by, it becomes confused. As the memory of beatings with the stick is relived in its spirit, the indecision in leaping or not leaping towards the bone it will go through for a while, corresponds to a simple and short inner struggle within it. And this situation indicates the form and way of working in animals of the mechanism we call conscience duality in mankind. This mechanism works automatically in animals. For example, The feeling of hunger directs an animal to overcome its feelings of fear or laziness, which prevents its duty of searching for food. It overcomes this feeling because its hunger compels it to make efforts to search and explore its surroundings for food. And this, similar to the conscience mechanism of mankind, prepares it for many grounds and possibilities for application. It cannot find food, it starves, it gets beaten in the places it goes, it fights with its fellow animals, and eventually it may get killed. These exist together with a great number of automatic conflicts, albeit temporary, in the being of that animal. Similarly, intense influences, connections of love coming from above, charge it with the duty of feeding and bringing up its newborn. In this way, the efforts it will make are in the face of all incoming influences that advance with the duality unit, which is the equivalent of the conscience mechanism in mankind, and what prepares animals automatically for the conscience duality in mankind is this duality unit. As to mankind, here, the same mechanism naturally starts to take on the form called conscience with its higher, that is, more comprehending, character. Reality of conscience in mankind has 3 stages as well: automatic, semi-comprehending, and also more or less comprehending. The automatic stage of conscience still belongs to the initial times of mankind. There may be those who mistakenly define such people as not having had their consciences developed yet. However, this judgment is wrong within the encompassing knowledge we gave pertaining to conscience duality. And this situation is the result of mankind's inability to see duality openly. However, regardless of how the conscience mechanism at the initial levels of humanity is vague and appears automatic, it has still enriched with more or less comprehending acts in comparison to those in animals. For example, in the comprehension of a woman at the initial stage of humanity who is attached to her baby with a great love, there are more or less powerful feelings, intuitions, and even fragments of knowledge pertaining to the obligation of motherhood. She does not feed her baby like an animal does, solely by obeying her blind instincts. She accepts the necessity of taking precautions as much as her mind allows and of enduring some self-sacrifice for her baby not to get sick, not to be disturbed, not to die, and makes efforts on this path. She does not shake off her growing child as animals do. Again, as much as her mind allows and her knowledge permits, she comprehends the necessity of occupying herself with the training and education of the child, and so more or less attains the intuition of obligation that she owns motherhood to her child on this path. However, on the other hand, she may not be doing these things. That is, the state of freedom and independence, which separates the humankind automatism in its initial stages, from the automatism of the animal realm indicates that the sense of responsibility and comprehension, which do not exist in animals, has started to rise in mankind, even if as a state of intuition. The rise of this sense of responsibility is the beginning of the most important emotions which are factors in the acceleration of human development. 4. These have great roles to play in terms of the states of equilibrium between the opposites of conscience reality directed to duty and earthly cravings. By these means, a human being, through the necessary automatisms, will be prepared for the sense of duty as myriad tests and trials, sufferings, torments, observations, in short, innumerable events taking place in his or her field of comprehension.